Good morning, everyone. As Andrea said, my name is John Dietl. I am with Connecticut Computer or CT Comp, and we're going to talk today a little bit about um, Microsoft and securing your migration and modernizing infrastructures. In other words, how do you get to the Azure cloud from where you are? Um, Before I begin, there is a little housekeeping to note. Next month, we will not have a meeting. It's just too close to the holidays, so if it was to go on, I think a lot of people will be thinking about holidays. I probably will, as well. So we're going to skip December, and our next meeting will be in January, and Andrea will send us out all the links for the Zoom meetings, starting it back up again in the new year. So again, nothing in December for us, so maybe you can go to the meeting at the end of the month and skip December. And Today we'll get into talking a little bit about cloud migrations. So how do you get from, where you are to the cloud, and some of the ramifications that are um, involved in that. So really, everybody's looking at and grappling with today's environment, inflation, rising energy prices, the electric bills are going through the roof, those types of things. Um, Geopolitical troubles, supply chain disruptions, all kinds of things, as well as security and breaches that are eroding trust, and having lack of labor, with talent shortages and things like that. So the market is the dynamics around our markets are changing, which affects IT, and we need to take a look at how do we, you know, get along into the future. Um, Technology in general is beginning to move. I think really what drove some of this was the whole pandemic, the COVID pandemic, if you will, or COVID in general, started to transform people, and the whole get out of the office and get into different data centers and things like that. Um, some statistics here are kind of interesting. Um, that organizations, 72% are already thinking about or moving because of the pandemic to platforms in the cloud. Um, the next one kind of really hit me. 85% of organizations by 2025 will embrace a cloud first approach. So, in other words, no longer thinking about a data center, but everything will go in the cloud. And that just shows how rapid to me that people are moving to the cloud. 93% of all networks still can be penetrated by cyber criminals. We see it all the time in our industry. People are calling up, they've got ransomware, they need to be, restored or DR'd from that. And um, you know, you any little hole and the cyber criminals will find it and take advantage of it. So again, still a very high number. 93% are not well protected, or protected enough that they can be penetrated. But it goes to show you, in my opinion, that you know some of these of the 93% are very well protected, but they're still exposed a bit and therefore can be penetrated. And then there's the whole work basis of teams working more and more dynamically, with hybrid work modules. Again, COVID brought that on, where people are not together anymore. They're working from home. They're working from different locations, and today most companies can support that model because of the COVID for remote computing. So again, over half of the companies have a hybrid work model going on. Although I think some of that may be pulling back. We're starting to see trends where companies are starting to require more and more of their employees to come back to the office more or fully. So what can the cloud do to you um, when you move to it, or do for you, I guess I should say. So there's kind of an evolution that most companies go through. In other words, companies don't just like lift their data center up and drop it in the cloud on a certain day and be done. Most companies go through a path, and the path is kind of even outlaid in this screen, where it says what you can do kind of in each stage as you get there. So if you're mainly on premise today, you may have some connections to some of the services in Azure, so or in the cloud, I should say. So maybe your email is up in the cloud today, or maybe your SharePoint is up in the cloud, things like that. So these are all things that are starting to move people to the cloud. This is kind of the infancy, and you're mixing and managing infrastructure updates still at on-prem, as well as now dealing with the cloud, where you don't have to manage the infrastructure as uh, per se. And then what the next step is to start the migration to infrastructure as a service. So typically what we are seeing is, as things begin to retire, so in other words, as you run your cycle of replacement of servers, people are taking a hard look at the cost of hardware and the overhead to run it, and to look for does it make sense to go to the cloud where you get some things as well as just the price to run. One of the things you get with the cloud when you move your IaaS platform is that you'll get better resiliency. So you can be running in 3 different locations if you want. You can run here, you can run in Chicago, and you can run in the West Coast, or even Europe, or I don't know if any of you are international, but again, you can run in data centers all over the world. And if any of them goes down, you can, kind of quickly and efficiently switch to the other, data centers, and be without, if you will, interruption. Um, you can maximize your investment in skill sets and still maintain the workloads that are running with your old tools, if you will, as you migrate, that are running on these servers, so that people don't have to become Azure experts right away. They can still use the tools that they're used to, if you will. So like one of the things that I've seen is that a lot of people use VMware as their base product, and you can run VMware on Azure, um, eh, right out of the gate if you need or want to, so you don't have to learn, the Microsoft virtual end of life right away. Or you could actually just convert your VMware stuff to native Microsoft stuff up in Azure. So, a couple items there if you do want to, kind of get the full benefits going. And then finally, you'll be up in the cloud, and you'll be modernized to everything being cloud native. So again, all the tools that you're using that are not cloud tools will be retired at that point. You'll have, app development capabilities. You'll have higher productivity because of, different intelligent automation. And then you'll have no, if you will, on-premise footprint. And so that'll save some money and management and whatnot. So that time savings can be used to do other things um, as well. So that's kind of like the if you will, to me, a look at what you gain as you move to the cloud a bit, and kind of the journey that most people are on. Um, so some of the benefits are obviously there's the ability to optimize your technical investments, freeing yourself from the burdens of hardware and RAM and disk and worrying about all of that. You can To me, it's kind of fun. You can actually completely change your hardware spec in Azure with literally a couple clicks and a reboot, and you'll have a whole different hardware platform you're running on. You need to up the memory. You can up the memory, changing the size of the VM that you're running in Azure. You get that increase in performance and resiliency. So you're, not looking at downtime um, costs as much uh, anymore because you can build in resiliency. Um, Leveraging, of course, some of the cost of that resiliency versus the downtime cost of that. Um, then again, you come with security, with built-in security and compliance. Azure happens to be the most secure cloud based on, I guess, the number of certifying organizations that they can check off. They they have over 100 security certifications that they run with, and HIPAA, of course, is one of those. Um, so they do cover your kind of niche, if you will. In fact, a lot of healthcare companies are looking at Azure seriously and moving to that. In fact, I believe behind financial centers, it's the second biggest Azure consumer at this point. And then agility and innovation. You can, as things change, you'll get the latest and greatest and not have to deal with that risk as well. Um, Obviously, you move from CapEx to OpEx by going to um, the cloud, and there is some benefits to doing that. Um, and in terms of being kind of having the good modern stuff, you're obviously going to get the best and the brightest. Microsoft will make Azure come out first before it releases it to on-prem machines. I can guarantee you that, as well as modernization of all the infrastructures, where the hardware under the hood will change as hardware changes, and you don't have to worry about that. Optimization will give you a more efficient structure. Again, freeing up some of your time because of the resources and whatnot that you won't have to deal with as much. A little bit of agility in the investment um, world and financial risk, because you're you're not doing capital investments per se. You can move and change on a hourly basis, on a every 10-minute basis, or whatever you need to move and change where. And then consolidation of tools to simplify your um, management of things. Azure Arc, for instance, is kind of like Azure's look at a one pane of glass kind of management tool to look at. Um, the business critical apps, you can protect them and make sure that there are any kind of unforeseen events. With Azure, you have a 4.9 up rate, and that's not for a server failure. That's the entire data center failing in Azure that you're running on. And then you can do a continuity um, with an RTO of 30 minutes, and that's an entire region failing. So you can, fail over to you're running on the East Coast, you can fail over to the West Coast, or you can fail over to Germany or wherever you need to or want to fail over to, um, you know, um, with an RTO of about 30 minutes. So again, this is pointing to Azure Site Recovery product and Azure Backup as well. So all built into Azure, all services that you can, subscribe to and utilize. Microsoft Defender for Azure starts to give you some of the security threat intelligence that you need. And again, it typically reduces your time to mediate threats by about 50%. It ensures compliance across all kinds of different regulatory um, uh, platforms or HIPAA, et cetera. Unifies again security so that they're trying to get better and better at kind of a one pane of glass look at things to ensure there's less management and more cost savings throughout um, the 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 deal you'll hear about in the security world. Microsoft um, Purview Compliance Manager. That's the kind of the platform that the security is based on. Um, so you have that. You can also, increase productivity for your developers by about 50% is what they calculate. And again, remember, this is all Microsoft numbers. So um, I always say your mileage will vary and probably be a bit lower in most cases. But, that Microsoft will do everything in its power to make the number as good as possible. Um, so I always take them with a little grain of salt. Um, and the ability to innovate by providing, again, automation and managed platforms. They do a lot in the world of automation. Almost everything in the platform can be automated, so that if you have developers or you want to write stuff that interact with Azure, you can do so, and all their services. In fact, our DR as a service platform that we run for our customers um, is automated, and they restore up to Azure. So that's my click. Um, so again, there's a lot of tools to help you and look at things to help you migrate and modernize up into the cloud. Um, to me, if you're fully still on-prem, the first things that most of the on-prem customers that we see will do is to start with Office and move Office up to the cloud, which would be more or less retiring your Exchange servers, your SharePoint servers, your team stuff, any of that kind of thing that you have going on, and then start to move to the cloud services with those. Um, and at that point, that's your beginning step. Then a lot of companies are looking at, as you're retiring, to start optimizing and modernizing and scaling by moving to the IaaS platform, and then eventually making the full link to cloud first thoughts. So all of those are um, talk quite a bit. There's a lot of guidance that Microsoft has written in documents and things like that to give you best practices and things like that if you want to start that journey. Um, so, again, Windows and SQL workloads can, everything can go up, but you can go up with Windows and SQL, kind of giving you good, better security probably than you have on-prem, and quickly and easily being able to do what you need to do. Um, you can basically enable secure remote desktops as well. So if you put, if you put all your servers up in Azure, you might as well put the workstations up there too, and you can then run at, the cloud speed, if you will, which is, pretty quick to have Windows 11 machines up in the cloud that you can connect to through sort of RDP, or they have a couple of different products. One's called Bastion, and the other is simply RDP. But you again, just paying for what you need or what you're using at any time. You can, as I mentioned before, you can migrate, your VMware workloads as well as your um, migrate the VM workload to native Azure, and get rid of your VMware licenses as you need to. When you migrate to the VMware in the cloud, they do provide you with the VMware subscription that you need to run in the cloud. And then you can also move Linux and OSS databases up into the cloud. So, to me, in general, most, if not all of your stuff falls under these categories. Do you have Windows 10 or 11? Do you have Windows servers, Linux servers, VMware VMs, those types of things? So you can see that, probably for most of you, you can get everything up in the cloud fairly simply, um, um, at least on paper. Migrating is kind of tricky sometimes because what plays with what and how do you do that? But you can, create VPNs to Azure, so from your on-premise stuff, so everything can talk to each other, and you can work that way. Or you can, if you need a bigger, if you need something better than VPN for speed or anything, you can make, WAN link connections up into Azure, as well. Um, so again, once you're kind of up there, or even just beginning, you can start looking at some of your workloads and apps and using Azure services to kind of do that. One of the things is, Azure's disk storage. It provides you with, high availability or high reliability disks if you need to. So, you can start thinking about perhaps using it as an offsite backup, container, as well. There are, of course, a lot of different choices when it comes to offsite backups, and we actually choose a little bit less expensive one for that. But again, it's there. If you're going up fully into Azure, then we do recommend Azure Backup and Azure Disk Storage, just so everything's up there and ready to go for you. There's a service called Azure Files, which gives you file storage up in the cloud. And then there's NetApp. If you have a NetApp environment, you can do the NetApp files as well. So again, everything's secure, everything's protected. You can use monitoring it all and optimize some of that through the process with just services alone. Again, you can do things like If you're doing any container stuff, Azure supports Kubernetes. It supports obviously SQL with managed instances. Um, and you can automate everything through Microsoft's Power Platform. You can run across the cloud. So you can do with, Azure Arc. I think I mentioned that before, but you can do Azure Arc and support multi-cloud. So if you do have stuff in AWS or, other places, you can manage it all through Azure Arc. To deal with it. And then the entire Azure AI and ML type services are machine learning and artificial intelligence services are there. And you'll see as we go on more and more things built around or containing AI to add intelligence for the user's experience. So if you're worried about the platform up in the cloud, um, Microsoft has 8,500 people working in their data centers. They get 65 trillion hits a day in terms of the global signatures. They are investing 20 billion, that's a B word, billion in security over the next 5 years, and they have 100 or more compliance certifications in the cloud. So again, it's a comprehensive and multi-layered security platform, which is what everyone always recommends, the Band-Aid over the Band-Aid over the Band-Aid over the Band-Aid to protect um, things. So there's things to look at. There's Defender for Cloud. There's Microsoft Sentinel, which is a security and information event management platform. There's a network security based on zero trust. There's confidential computing platform, if you will, to protect your data, and analysis is done on that. There's SQL analytics to give you monitoring in the cloud. And there's, for the folks that do application development, there's GitHub security with integration that secures your app code and dependencies with GitHub if you're using the cloud. So lots of different security for those that are worried about, is it safe? Is it secure? Microsoft's doing everything in its power to make sure that it is secure, and they're standing behind that. So the 8,500 security personnel, 20 billion in investments, and they get a lot of hits every day to monitor and deal with that type of, figuring out what's going on in the security world. So in terms of next steps, you take a look at where you are and then kind of see where you're going. The fall is always a great time to start thinking about, projects for next year and where do you want to go. So again, like I said, if you're just starting off, start thinking about throwing your email into the cloud. If you already have your email in the cloud, maybe start looking at Azure as a file system repository. Throw a couple domain controllers up there, maybe put your file services up there, perhaps. Create a VPN, and everyone on-prem will be getting their files from the cloud without even knowing it. From there, what's the next steps? You can, kind of figure it out whether you want to start putting critical apps up there or not, that type of thing. So again, based on that, start thinking about your disaster recovery plans. A lot of our customers are looking, or were looking because we have a solution for them now. But, a year or two ago, they were looking at, well, how can we disaster recovery to, Azure? We have a lot of Microsoft servers, or we have all Microsoft servers. Can we, back them up to Azure and recover them in the cloud? The simple answer is yes, there is. The more complex answer is there's a billion ways to do it, and how you do it depends on things like your RTO and RPO that you need to have. And so, again, these are all ideas to start getting you more immersed into the cloud and learning more about it. Microsoft offers plenty of learning online, and it's free. Go to microsoftlearning.com and you can start taking a few classes on the fundamentals of Azure and Azure Administrator, those types of classes as well. So with that, I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but again, the next time we will meet will be probably the third week in January. So just keep that in mind as well. So I open it up. Any questions?
Hey, John, how are you? Tyler
Good.
here.
Hi.
So this was a great topic. We're actually in the middle of migrating our on-prem exchange to 365, and then we're going to SharePoint Online pretty much right after the new year when we finished up the exchange migration. Just curious what you see out there for a couple things. One with aging services, dealing with HIPAA, PHI, all that stuff. Are you seeing companies, organizations using their SharePoint Online and their Microsoft 365 email accounts accessed from all over the world with two-factor in, or are you seeing more with like a conditional access policy where you can only get in from like our internal network, our VPN, or like trusted public IP networks? What are you kind of seeing? Or curious if anybody else on the call, if they're on 365, how they have it set up?
Yeah. Technically, we see both. Yeah. So first, MFA. Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Period. Period. Yes.
Yeah.
Whether you're in the office or not in the office, everything is MFA these days. So yes. Whether you use strictly MFA, or if you're doing conditional access, really depends on the organization. And what we also see is kind of a hybrid approach where some employees can, conditional access means some employees can and some employees can't, right? So, certain organizations, only the top people can go out off-site and get their mail and things like that, where others, they don't allow it. Other organizations say that the higher ups can't do that and only the lower folks do it. So it really depends on the philosophy. And others say, I want everyone to be able to do it because then they'll work 24/7 for me, right? So again, it depends on the company that we're dealing with, the organization we're dealing with, their kind of mottos of what they're trying to do, and what kind of security they're willing to deal with, at least from my perspective. Let's open it up to the group. Anyone else have 365, and what are you doing?
Hey John.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of clients that in the healthcare, what works for them is, as you laid out, in like a hybrid approach where you're going to have the executives and they're going to call them administrative workers. So you're like a director of nursing, your nursing supervisors and stuff like that, versus let's call them CNAs or people in cook staff, cleaning staff. Oh, well, I'm just that what they have is they lock it down and says, look, you access it from a PC or something on network. You get all your information that way. That way we don't have to spend the extra money for the multi-factor authentication or put extra security around those users. And then the more, the people that are more apt to be working 24/7 or be on call are the ones that'll have that multi-factor authentication and multiple ways to connect and get the stuff. And then, we make sure that all the security protocols are in place for that for them.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? Everyone, we have a lot of shy folks. Or is anyone actually using Office 365, or are all of you still on-prem? Or what cloud services do you use for email?
Use 365.
You do? Okay. Do you allow remote access or only on-prem?
I'm new
Okay.
to the facility, but I believe we VPN in if we're off site to access.
Okay.
I mean,
We do the same.
So you're VPNing in and then accessing the email from there.
We do as well. We have 65 and Office 65, and we do the same.
Gotcha. And
Awesome.
do you guys MFA the VPN connections?
I'm not one of you guys. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So when you log into the office, do you have to use your phone as well?
No.
Okay.
So that, yeah, that's
John, you should talk to them and get them on MFA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You may want to learn a little bit about MFA stands for multi-factor authentication. MFA or multi-factor authentication says we tell the system who we are by multiple factors, meaning typically something you know and something that you have. So for instance, what you know is your password, and what you have is a cell phone or what they call like a fob. It will flash a number and then you key that number in so that that it's kind of something you own, that you have as a person, so that I can't guess your password and log in as you across when we're outside of the network. That's all. Because again, I can steal your password or go buy it on the dark web a lot of times, and people aren't aware of that. So
And
another
you call that what is it called?
multi-factor authentication. So it's MFA. It's something that is really important to me in the security realm.
I'll check with
And
I'll check
yeah.
with people who know what that means.
Yeah,
See if
and
we're
make
doing
sure that at least, if you're allowing remote access to your network, I highly recommend it, because the bad guys can just sit out at that portal when they figure it out and find it and start hammering usernames and passwords, and then break into your network. And it's scary how quick they can be.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, anyone else?
John,
Comments, question? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious too. So with 365, right? With
Yep.
backups, are you seeing
Yep.
people use just Microsoft's? You know how they offer the 30 days, you could grab it, an Exchange mailbox, and if you need to recover something within 30 days and have that set up. Are you seeing a lot of people buy a third party product on top of that to go back further, say like 6 months? Or are you seeing people just use the native Microsoft for backup?
We're seeing,
Or
well,
both, probably.
no, we actually pitched the third party.
You do.
Yeah. So we use a product that backs up seamlessly all of your office stuff. So it'll back up your um, um, SharePoint stuff. It'll back up your team stuff. It'll back up everything. And it's licensed, if you will, per user. So it backs up all that user stuff without the user having to know anything, or
Awesome.
even the administrators have to know anything about, what's being backed up. So,
Now, do you guys make your own product, or do you sell product like Veeam and Rubrik and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, um, typically we are resellers.
Okay.
For the DR as a service that we use is homegrown. We wrote the platform for our customers, but it's because we deal with a lot of small businesses as well as so when it comes to healthcare, you guys are in a little bit higher bucket than you're still probably considered small to Microsoft, but to us you're kind of a medium-sized businesses. We figure pretty much anything over, say, 150 users is kind of a medium, business
Oh,
versus
we're about
versus
1,500.
yeah, versus, well, you're actually in Microsoft's eyes a medium-sized business,
Yep.
so it's 1,000 plus in the Microsoft world. So while the bulk of our users can fall under our umbrella, what we find is that for a company the size that you have, you would need to run with the Microsoft, probably Azure backups and site recoveries, simply because the number of servers that you probably have and the amount of data that you probably have would not probably work well with, well, it will take a long time to restore with, and we do sell Veeam. So if you were with us, you'd be backing up to Veeam. And it really just depends on, the number of servers and the size of the data for the
Yeah.
resource.
Hey,
Yeah.
John,
Yep.
one other thing that sometimes some of my clients get a little confused with, because you know how Microsoft makes things very clear.
Mhm.
There is, think of it as two different data centers. There is the Office 365, and that's completely separate than the Azure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Yeah.
so when we're backing up 365, that whole tenant where you got your SharePoint online, you got your OneDrive for business, you've got the Teams, you've got
Yeah,
your email and stuff. That's 365, and that's where the
Yeah,
third party product we use is a true cloud to cloud backup. Though we've had some clients try to use the Veeam, but then what's happening is you're downloading, taking up your bandwidth to have it put on your local network to then put back up to the cloud. So we're skipping a step and keeping your bandwidth open. That's on the third party. And then there's what you have for backup for Azure, which is separate.
Right. Yeah. So so when you're backing up Office, we resell that product. When you're backing up um, your local servers, we resell that product. But the DR service that we perform for our customers is homegrown. So maybe that's a little better. So what we take are Veeam backups and move them up to the cloud, more or less doing a cloud to cloud copy of the data, because we typically are storing it in a product called Wasabi for the servers and things, and then Wasabi to Azure copies. We see about a 1 gig copy there. So, 1 to 2 gigs tend to be streaming at any time across that. So restores fairly quickly. I can take a typical domain controller will restore in 10 minutes using that. So, and that's not having a server in Azure when you start. So we can build the server and copy it up. It's, so it's fairly quick, but if you have a lot of servers or a lot of data, then you want to start thinking about doing Azure backups or site recovery. And like I said, as you get into the larger number of users, they tend to have more data and more backup time. The recovery time needs to be fairly quick, and just copying crap all over the wire even at 1 gig or 2 takes too long. So
Yeah.
at that point, what we do is we kind of, start working through the different Azure technologies with, it's more of a consultative thing. And then we typically, have it written down and then we throw the switch and go, that type of thing. So.
I believe, and Dean, you could verify this, but we are hybrid as of right now. I'm curious what it would take to go, and if it's worth it to go full cloud, full Azure.
Okay, so in my opinion, raw costs, right? If you look at just the cost of your hardware, say in 5 years, or if you how often do you replace your hardware is the key to the numbers.
Well,
Because if you
we're going through a big renovation right now, so a lot of things are being added and changed and all that.
right,
I've only been
but
here like
yeah,
2 months, so I don't know like the
gotcha.
full cost analysis and all that.
Right. Yeah. So typically, a lot of businesses attempt to cheat the time window, and they run their servers for maybe 6, 7, 8. We had a couple running them for 10 years. So if you run hardware in your environment for 10 years and it's still running, there's no way that you beat you kill Azure in terms of pricing. But
Right.
if you change your servers every 3 to 5 years, then it's pretty much on. So,
Right.
if you change them every 3, Azure's the way to go. If you change them every 5, you're you're pretty close to the total spend. However, now then you have to consider, well, by going to Azure, I have no more and labor costs associated with that server. So, how much time do your employees, spend fixing um, uh, or repairing, maintenance, et cetera, on your servers? Um, if you're a client of ours, you're paying typically a service fee, so that dollar amount is not going to an employee, but it's going to your third party, whoever
Right.
services you, right?
Right.
So that number goes away as well. Then you add in, well, with this, I can back it up. It'll just back up by itself. I can put a site recovery on this thing and say, okay, if it fails, you throw a switch and it's now running over on the West Coast. Um, you know, uh, so you start to gain these advantages that were kind of alluded to in the slide. And then you have all the security and things, threat analysis, all that stuff built around it to help with your, security needs. So that's when it starts to me, if you're taking advantage of that stuff, the cloud starts to win in a good way,
Understood.
you know. But if you don't, then keep your stuff on-prem, it'll be cheaper. So if all you care about is like the raw cost and you can run your servers for 6 to 8 years, God bless you, but it's going to be cheaper to keep them on-prem. To me, about 5 years is the switch point.
That switch around, yeah.
Yeah. So, any other questions, comments? I will send a PDF of this PowerPoint presentation to Andrea, as well as a couple of articles that I read while researching this topic. I think one is actually mentioned in the topic. The PDF also has, I don't know if you noticed, a lot of footnotes. A lot of those actually contain links that will come through on the PDF, so you can click the link and get that actual document that they're referencing if you want to do that, as well. But I'm going to send a couple documents that I had online, which is so you'll look for an email from her to follow up on this. Other than that, I think we are done for this topic for now, and we'll see you all in January.
Great. Thank you so much, John.
No problem.
So I looked at the calendar and our date for January is January 18th. The
Okay.
link will stay the same for next year, and I'll send people a Outlook invite so that way you can have it dropped into your calendar. So
Perfect.
happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next year.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye.
I know.